It's Wednesday. And I got an issue with my mic. There we go. There we go. It's Wednesday. And you know what that means. Go ahead and start lining up your comments. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. As we'll get to social media maneuvers a little bit later on in the show. Got a couple of topics I wanted to discuss. Got a Thursday night football look ahead. Bucs, Eagles, big game really for the Eagles. Really want to keep your season alive and well. Well, you know what? I shouldn't say that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Trade deadline is vastly approaching. And it's really quiet because, you know, the NFL's trade deadline, not really that big of a deal. Could be a little bit bigger this year. We'll talk about that and more on the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 212th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. A lot to get to today. Got to start again by reminding everyone out there that the Atlanta Braves are going to the NLCS. I am excited about that. At least one of my teams is good enough to play in their respective sports championship series / game. Feels good, feels good. We got unfinished business. Dodgers evened up the series with the Giants last night. So that series is 2 apiece. Game 5, which is essentially game 7 in that particular series for all the marbles. I'm rooting for the Dodgers because I want to beat the Dodgers. It's time for the bully to get bullied. And the Dodgers right now in the NL are the bullies. It's time for the bullies to get bullied. And I want to be the one doing the bullying. So we'll see how that goes. But in any event, let's get to today's show and the evening's proceedings, shall we? I believe we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So the trade deadline is looming. It's vastly approaching. It'll be here at the end of the month. It comes every end of October, and this year is no different. So I think there are some interesting names that are floating out there, and, you know, none bigger than the quarterback position. We'll get to that. But there's some other positions that I think some teams could use an upgrade at, and it could really help their football team. So let's throw out a few names that are lingering about in NFL circles as guys that may be available. We've seen more trades, I think, this year than we've seen in past years. You know, we've seen a lot of trades in the offseason, you know, with movement of quarterbacks and things of that nature. But it's also bled into the season where we've seen, you know, teams in the case of Jacksonville trading away a former first-round pick. And when you say former, you're thinking, okay, probably 3-4 years down the road, a guy that's been there and has failed and is looking like a bust. No, we're talking about a guy that they spent a first-round pick, 9th overall, a season ago, and now he's already been shipped out to Carolina and C.J. Henderson. I mean, we're seeing guys like that move. You know, Dan Arnold being shipped to Carolina, you know, or Jacksonville rather, you know, in that exchange. And you're just saying, what is Jacksonville doing right now? You know, we've seen some surprise cuts. You know, we've seen guys had to find new homes in season. So a lot of things have transpired. I think we're not done yet. I think we will see more trades. And there are a couple of names that really interest me on this list of guys that could potentially be traded and guys we should look out for come the end of October. And I'm gonna drop a few names on you and see what you think. So in watching a lot of Texans football this year, one of the guys that has stood out to me is Lonnie Johnson Jr., their cornerback that they selected out of Kentucky about maybe 3 years ago now. It feels like Lonnie Johnson's been in the league. And he's playing some confident football. I was really impressed with him last game. against the New England Patriots. And I've really been impressed with him this season. He's tall, he's long, he's got range, he's got ball skills, had an interception against the Patriots this past weekend. This is a guy that I think is intriguing and a guy that you can get your hands on him now and feel good about him. You can re-sign this guy to a deal and not overpay, not have to go out on the market and overspend for a guy like Lonnie Johnson. That's an intriguing guy because every team can use cornerback help. They're in a team right now in the league that could say to themselves, "No, we're good at corner." You can always, just like defensive ends, you can always use more corners. Always. There's always an injury. There's always a hamstring or an ankle or a groin. There's always something going on in the secondary. You can always use more. And I can't think of a contending team right now that couldn't use another cornerback. So Lonnie Johnson is a name that I think is really interesting and one to keep an eye on because the Texans know they're not winning anything of note this year, and they need to be gathering up as many assets as they can possibly get so that when they really start to get into trying to rebuild this thing, they've got as many assets as they can gather at one time to really fast track this thing. You don't want to stink for too long. So Lonnie Johnson is a guy that he probably won't be around when they decide that they're ready to start winning. Why not get something for him if you know you're not going to be able to retain his services down the road? That's a guy to look out for there. This is one of the names that intrigues me the most on this list. Marlon Mack is a guy that I've loved in Indianapolis. Last year was unfortunate. He was going into his contract year. He tears his ACL week 1. Season's done. Just like that. He goes onto the free agent market. No one's checking for him because he's coming off of an injury and he didn't play last year, essentially. And so he had to go back to Indianapolis. He knew that's not really where he wanted to be. They were loaded at the running back position, and Jonathan Taylor was coming off of a fantastic rookie campaign in which he led all rookies in rushing. So he knew that his time in Indianapolis was pretty much numbered, but he went back there anyway because that was the only place that was really willing to give him an opportunity. So he goes back to Indy. They're really not giving him a lot of touches. Jonathan Taylor, as we saw on Monday night, is fully capable of carrying the load as a pass catcher and as a rusher out of the backfield. So Marlon Mack has become expendable. And the Colts have made no bones about it. He's available. If you want him, make us an offer. He can be yours. I think that there are teams like Kansas City in particular with the injury to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And let's not just make this out to be a one-off with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Since he's gotten in the league, he's been banged up, okay? He's a physical runner, and he's taken some hits, and he's been injured multiple times since coming into the league last year. Marlon Mack, to me, would be a really good – and I think Darrell Williams is cool, but – he's all right, but he's not real. No one's afraid of Darrell Williams when he comes in the game. He's cool, but the Chiefs need a game changer. And it's not like they don't have Jerick McKinnon, but Jerick McKinnon is all right. But again, he's not what you would call a true difference maker as a running back because he's not a pure running back, So for me, Marlon Mack would make a ton of sense for a team like Kansas City. I think Marlon Mack would make a ton of sense for a team like Baltimore. Because I look at Baltimore and they got all of these veteran backs that they've brought in, Le'Veon Bell and Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman. And I'm like, all of those dudes are cool. None of those guys are home run hitters, though. None of those guys are a threat to take it 77 yards. Marlon Mack is. And if you watch Monday night's game against the Ravens, Marlon Mack looked good. He looked spry and he looked explosive. If I'm the Ravens, I'm taking notes. I'm like, hey, he looked really damn good against us. But I don't know if the Ravens are looking to do anything. I know their run game could use a shot in the arm. I do know that. I do know that this 3 yards in a cloud of dust with these old-ass veteran backs that they have isn't getting the job done. We'll see what happens with Marlon Mack and if a market develops for him. But Marlon Mack on that 1-year deal, it's not a lot of money. So, that's what you also have to take into consideration when you talk about trades is you're taking on a guy's contract, whatever's left of it. There's no guaranteed money after the season, but, whatever left of that contract this year has to be paid out. You're inheriting that. So Marlon Mack has a meager deal. It's not going to cost you anything. Peanuts, literally. Pennies on the dollar. I think someone should be interested and giving Marlon Mack an opportunity. I'd love to see him go somewhere where he can get an opportunity to be a lead back again and really help a team that's making a playoff push. That's a guy that I'm really intrigued by. Marcus May. Jets slapped the franchise tag on him this past offseason. The Jets stink. I don't know if he's in their future or not, but he's already said that he would welcome a trade to a contending team. And I don't know if the Jets are willing to pay him what he thinks he's worth, which is why they had to slap the franchise tag on him. He's dealt with an injury already this year, so maybe the Jets are somewhat disappointed in what they've gotten from him. Remember, this is a new staff, so they didn't know what they were getting in Marcus May. Only thing Robert Saleh knew was, hey, this is the guy that I've watched on tape. I like what I see, and now I want him to be here, and I want to see if this is a guy that really fits in my scheme. Well, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's been injured, and Marcus May hasn't, lived up to the expectations that Robert Saleh has set for him, and he's like, you know what? Let his ass walk. Matter of fact, let's get something for him. Let's not just let him walk. Let's try to trade him. So I don't know how many teams are actually thirsty for a safety. Safety is one of those positions that's kind of hit or miss. Teams are like, yeah, we can use the safety, but we don't want to give you anything for your safety. We'll just get our own safety, or we'll just find somebody on the scrap heap. Like, we really disrespect the safety position. But then when you don't have one, it's glaring and it's very noticeable when you're struggling at that position. But yet they treat it like how they used to treat the running back position. We can get one anywhere, dime a dozen, don't worry about it. But when you don't have good safety play, your defense struggles. Remember, safety is called safety for a reason, because it's the last line of defense. If your safeties stink or they're undisciplined, you're going to give up big plays. Your defense is going to struggle because of it. If your safeties can't cover, if your safeties can't tackle, if there's a glaring weakness at your safety position, your defense will not maximize its true potential. And so a guy like Marcus May, very intriguing. I don't think anyone's going to pull the trigger on him, though. I don't. And considering that he's making some quality money on that franchise tag, and you're getting him essentially for 2 months as a rental, I don't know if anybody's going to be willing to give up what the Jets may be asking for Marcus May and what it's going to cost in terms of money to pay him during the course of this season. But that's another interesting name to throw out there. I don't think he's going to get traded, though. Zach Ertz is a guy that I think could, will, and probably should be traded by the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, there was a disconnect between the two parties, Ertz and his camp and the Eagles in the offseason. Ertz says they're in a great spot now. There was a misunderstanding. They've come to the table. They've talked, ironed everything out. He wants to finish his career as a Philadelphia Eagle, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, if the Eagles can extract value out of Zach Ertz, because somebody could use Zach Ertz, and they still haven't paid Zach Ertz the money that he's seeking, he can leave at the end of the year. If I'm the Eagles, and I don't know if they're planning on paying him or not, I feel like they need to get what they can get from Zach Ertz, out of Zach Ertz, and move on. And every team in the league can use an upgrade at the tight end position. And I'm not saying Zach Ertz is Zach Ertz from 3 years ago that could get you 100 grabs in a season. But if you're struggling at the tight end position, Zach Ertz can come in and upgrade your position. That's for sure. And there are some teams that I look at that are teams that may be contending for something meaningful this season that could use a shot in the arm at the tight end position. So I wouldn't be shocked to hear Zach Ertz on the move potentially. He is an intriguing name, a guy that I think still has some gas left in the tank. And if I'm a team, and I don't know what everyone's cap situation looks like, I don't know what everybody's situation, but if I'm a team like the Tennessee Titans, Zach Ertz is very appealing to me. You're not getting out of the tight end position what you should be getting out of the tight end position, what you have been getting out of the tight end position over the last couple of years. Zach Ertz would really help that Titans offense along. So that's just a name to throw out there. Don't know what the Titans situation looks like. Don't know if they got any space to be able to do anything. Don't know if they're even willing to give up any draft capital. But a guy like Ertz would significantly enhance their offense, especially when you've got a running back like Derrick Henry. It opens up the middle of the football field. A guy like Zach Ertz would be able to take full advantage of that. And I think it would properly slot the rest of their tight ends, because they've got a tight end that I really like on their roster, but he's better suited as a 2 or a 3 tight end he's now being asked to be a number one, and that's not what he is. So Ertz would make a lot of sense for a team like Tennessee, but again, I don't know what their situation looks like. Bryce Callahan and Kyle Fuller in Denver have been rumored to be available potentially now with the return of Ronald Darby. Now, Darby missed the last 4 games with a hamstring injury, so he's going to return this week. So I wouldn't be too hasty to get rid of anybody, assuming that he's going to stay healthy, because that hasn't been what Ronald Darby's been about in his career. He's been a guy that's been oft injured. So I wouldn't be too hasty to get rid of anybody if I thought that Kyle or Ronald Darby could be a liability in terms of health. But that said, you signed Kyle Fuller to a 1-year deal. You're probably not going to re-sign him. And the beauty of the situation, I would more so keep Bryce Callahan if I'm the Broncos, because he's a nickel. And you can always use a nickel. And Callahan gives you positional flex because he can kick outside if need be. But in this league, it's so hard to find quality nickels, and Bryce Callahan is that. But if somebody's offering you the right price, hey, Bryce, it's nice knowing you, bro, but you got to go. But Kyle Fuller is the guy that I think they should move. When they brought Fuller in the mix, they didn't know that they were going to get their hands on Patrick Surtain II. I think that happened. Fuller's release happened prior to the draft. I could be wrong, and it could have happened after the draft, and they already had Patrick Surtain II. But either way, they got Patrick Surtain II. They want him to play more. They need him to play more because they want him to continue to develop as a young corner. You already signed Ronald Darby to a 3-year deal, so he's going to be in Denver for the foreseeable future. Kyle Fuller's only on a 1-year deal. To me, he's the guy that you try and move if you're Denver. Now, again, what are you going to really truly get for him? He's on a 1-year deal. It's going to be a two-month rental, essentially, and you're paying him, I think, $7 million. So someone's going to have to eat the remaining portion of that salary. I don't know what you're going to get, but I can tell you you'll get more than just letting him walk in the offseason. So that's another name, just like I talked about with Lonnie Johnson. The difference with Lonnie Johnson is he's much younger and much cheaper than Kyle Fuller. So if I'm looking for a corner, I'm probably more likely to go after Lonnie Johnson than I am Kyle Fuller. That said, if you're a veteran team and you're looking for help, like we know Green Bay has been sniffing around corners. We know that the Packers are looking to upgrade their secondary. When it was rumored that Stephon Gilmore was going to be available, the Packers were lining up all of their dogs to go after him. Devontae Adams had already DM'd him and said, bro, call me. Like, they were already lining up all of their weapons to go after this guy with a full court press. And I think they were going to get him. So we know the Packers are interested in upgrading their cornerback position, So it'd be interesting to see what they decide to do if they are serious about making a move to maybe acquire someone. Maybe a guy like Kyle Fuller is exactly what the doctor ordered, opposite of Jair Alexander. Lonnie Johnson's young, but maybe they think he's ready to come in and help. And again, it's not going to cost you a ton to be able to do that. The Packers, as we see, on the fly are retooling that defense. They signed Jalen Smith. They're interested in the cornerback position. I wouldn't rule out the Green Bay Packers being aggressive in free agency, in the trade deadline, and looking to upgrade their cornerback position. So those are names that are interesting. And then the biggest name that I think is available is Nicholas Foles. Now, his contract is not ideal, obviously. When he got that extension a couple of years ago, you're like, yeah, wouldn't have done that. But it was done. He's making a ton. And that's something you have to weigh if you're going to trade for him, especially you're trading for a backup quarterback that's making a ton of money. Nobody really wants to invest in a backup making, $18, $19 million a year. That's foolishness. However, in this league, nothing can deflate a season faster than an injury to the quarterback position. Look at the Seattle Seahawks. They were already struggling this year at 2-3. And now the injury to Russell Wilson really complicates their season. They don't think he's going to be back until the earliest, week 10. Well, we're in week 6. If he misses 4 games, and I think they have a bye week in there, if he misses 4 games and they go 1-3 in that stretch, their season's done. At that point, when he returns, they're going to be 3-7. So, or 3-6, excuse me. They're done. Stick a fork in them, they're done. Even if they go 2-2 in that stretch, they're still behind the 8 ball. If he comes back and they're 4-5. So I said all of that to say this. Not having a quality backup quarterback could put your season in peril just like that. Ask the Dallas Cowboys last season. And they had Andy Dalton. And they didn't think that Dalton would stink it up the way that he did and get injured and all of the things that happened. But you want a guy like Andy Dalton. The Cowboys didn't do anything wrong last year. It just didn't work out for them. But they had the right approach. I think about a team like Cincinnati, for instance. They're playing really good football right now. They're 3-2, easily could be 5-0, easily could be 4-1, but they're 3-2. If anything happens to Joe Burrow, they're done. Their backup situation stinks. You don't think having a guy like Nicholas Foles, and we know what off the bench Nicholas Foles looks like. Doesn't look like starter Nicholas Foles, okay? It's a totally different animal. When you get off the bench, Nicholas, you're getting some gold right there. Gold Foles. Could be Fool's Foles, but at the end of the day, when you get some off the bench Nick, it's nasty. I think about teams like that. I think about the teams like the Tennessee Titans. Anything happens to, and they got veterans, and they're probably not even interested because they got a veteran quarterback on their roster. But none of the guys that they have are the caliber of a Nicholas Foles. And I could go down the list of teams that are in a position to win and win big this season, but if anything happens to their starting quarterback, and again, I know I'm not saying much. Your starter goes down, you're probably in a world of trouble. But what if that starter only goes down for 3 weeks? If you don't like, let's say, I'll give you a great example. The Giants, they stink, and it's really irrelevant at this point. And I didn't think that Mike Glennon came in and did a horrible job against the Cowboys when Daniel Jones went down. But let's say that the Giants, coming into that game, they were 3-1. And Daniel Jones is going to be out for a few weeks with a concussion or whatever the case may be. You don't think a guy like Nicholas Foles would help enhance their chances of staying above water while he was out? When I look at some of these teams and everybody's got a backup, and a lot of these teams have a veteran backup, but the guy's not any good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't trust a lot of these teams' backup quarterbacks that are competing for something major right now. I mean, we've talked about the Dallas Cowboys situation. It stinks. God forbid anything happen to Dak Prescott. They're done. And they're sitting pretty right now at 4-1. But if Dak went down for just 2 weeks, they're in trouble. They got nothing behind him. You don't think a guy like Nicholas Foles would help? Now, again, there's a lot of money that's being invested into Nicholas Foles, and that scares some teams. And I don't blame teams for wanting to be a little bit precautious or apprehensive even when talking about Nicholas Foles, because there's a lot of money there. A lot of money. Don't know what his base salary is for this particular season, but there's a lot of money. And he's probably been paid up most of his bonuses already, but there's a lot of money that has been poured into Nicholas Foles to be a backup. And I don't know if teams want to take on that price tag. But I can tell you right now in this league, if you don't have a competent backup quarterback, you will struggle if your starter goes down. And again, we're not talking about for 8 to 12 weeks your starter goes down, or for the remainder of the season. You're done if your starter's done for the season. But I'm talking about a 4-game stretch. That could be the difference between you making the postseason and you missing the postseason. That 4-game stretch where your starting quarterback's out, like the Seattle Seahawks. If Russell Wilson stays healthy, they probably beat Pittsburgh this weekend. With him out, they're probably going to lose that game. I think that Steelers defense is going to devour Geno Smith. And the games thereafter, they may win one. I think Jacksonville is in there somewhere, I think. Don't quote me on that. And they may win that game, but the other games on their schedule, I think they're probably going to lose those games. And if Russell Wilson were healthy, they probably would win those games. Or if they had a better backup. And we'll see what Geno Smith does. Don't want to discount Geno after he showed us a little something on Thursday night last week. Same thing could be said for the Rams. If anything happens to Matthew Stafford, they are done. They got nothing behind him. Nothing. I watched those quarterbacks in the preseason. It's bad. Real bad. So that's kind of what I look at when I think about the trade deadline. It's like, hey, what do we need to put us in the best position to really make a run at a Lombardi? And for me, those are some players that come to mind with some teams that could use some more firepower to really put together the kind of squad that can compete in late December into January and potentially into February. So we'll see what happens there. But in any event, let's get to our next segment, and that's social media maneuvers. And see if we got any super chats. If not, we'll get straight to the comments. I do have one super chat, and it's from J Sauer 1990. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Greatly appreciate you, J Sauer 1990, that writes, what's your opinion of cornerback Corn Elder? Just like Ron Rivera said, smart football player, nothing special. I wasn't the biggest fan of Corn Elder coming out of the U, but he's a guy that I did think was a really heady football player, really smart, and Ron said that in his presser today. But again, there's a reason he was on the practice squad of I think the Panthers when he was poached or wherever he was, and not an active member of that team's roster, because he's a marginal NFL cornerback at best. So we're not getting anything special here. And so, you hope that we don't have to see him on the field, but we're lacking. Remember, one of the things we were most nervous about on this team after linebacker depth was cornerback depth. That was one of the things we were really iffy on. And we said if injuries ever hit, we could be in trouble at that position. Well, injuries have hit at that position. And so here we are, Torrey McTyer, that was a revelation. We had no idea we were going to have Torrey McTyer. He turned out to be a gem that we uncovered in camp. Well, he's done for the season. He said, oh, well, they kept Roberts. So, Darryl Roberts will be able to help us. Well, he's dealing with a quad injury and he's out. So, now you're and remember, we kept Troy Apke, but we don't ever want him to see the field. Well, now that, you're tapping into that depth, we don't want to put Apke on the field. So you got to do something. And this is what they're doing. Again, let's hope that Corn Elder doesn't have to play a ton of snaps. But again, he might have to be out there. Who knows? We'll see. And the Chiefs love to spread you out, so he could be on the field. And Ron said, one of the important things of bringing him on was that he knows the system and he could just jump right in and transition pretty seamlessly because of his knowledge of what they're doing defensively in Washington right now. So Ron had him in Carolina, obviously. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. Mike Lowry writes, any chance JDR gets a look for that Vegas coaching spot? No, he doesn't. I mean, first of all, the Raiders already had him before and he got fired. So they're not looking to go back for seconds. So why would you think that he would be getting a job from anybody? Our defense stinks right now. You don't get rewarded in this league with subpar to mediocre defense or offense as a coordinator. You get a job when you're doing a hell of a job with the current unit that you're coaching. So, I don't even know why you would bring that up. Protect Sports Network writes, what up, Lou? Who else could it be but me? Your man, Louie T. What up, Protect Sports? What up, Jarris Sports Take? Mike Lowry again says, Kenny Pickett out of Pitt quarterback. Have you seen him? What do you think? Seems solid to me. Exactly what you said. Seems solid. But are you really looking for solid? We got solid on the roster right now. We got solid in Kyle Allen. We got solid in Taylor Heineke. We got solid in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Is that really what you're looking for? I'm not looking for solid. I'm not looking for Kenny Pickett. I'm not checking for him. I've seen him have some really good games at Pitt. I'm watching him against Tennessee earlier this year, and he's shredding them. But I know Kenny Pickett, and I've watched enough Kenny Pickett to know he's just Kenny Pickett, and he's just all right. And that's not what we're after. Clearly, that's not what we're after. Let's see. Charles Hardy, right? So what's good, Lou? What's up, Charles? What positions do you think we will address in the 2022 draft with our first 3 picks? I can't say right now. Again, we're literally 5 weeks going into week 6 of the season, and you're asking me about what we're going to do with our first 3 picks. We could literally package those first 3 picks up for a quarterback. We don't know what the hell is going to happen right now. So impossible. To me, that's a conversation that's not even worth having until we get towards the end of the season. And even then, you still really don't know what we're going to do. But asking that question now, to me, seems like an exercise in futility. Honestly speaking, that's a conversation for March, when the season's done and we know exactly what the needs are on this football team. Because we sit here in week 5 going into week 6 now, and the needs on this team look like one thing, and we could get to the end of the season and guys could emerge. And all of a sudden you're like, man, we don't really need that now. I mean, this time last year, I would have told you the first thing we needed was a tight end. Well, Logan Thomas balled out, and I'm like, we need a tight end, but we don't have to get one too early. So you don't know how the situation will change. You don't know who will start balling and, what positions may fall off the face of the earth, and that may become a more pressing need than what it is right now. So it's hard to say. Let's see. Mike Lowry writes, what are the chances Terry gets tired of the inconsistency and dips out when his contract is up? Very, very low. Terry, first of all, football players aren't wired that way. Most times they want to be a part of the solution and not just bolt for a new opportunity. Terry's been here. This team gave him an opportunity. If they show him the money, Terry's going to stay. He's a pretty loyal guy. Most players want to stay with the team that drafted them, believe it or not, as long as they haven't been lied to or it hasn't been a contentious situation, which it hasn't. I think Terry would love to play with a better quarterback. And he's made it very clear that it's been tough to always have to adjust to a new quarterback every single year. And, oh, by the way, that quarterback not be all that great to begin with. He hasn't said that out of his mouth, but he did say it's tough having to constantly adjust to a new quarterback. He's had to adjust to he's had to adjust to 5 different quarterbacks in the last 2 seasons. Who else is doing that? You know what I'm saying? He had 4 last year, and he's had 1 extra one this year. So that wears on you. And his numbers, I think they aren't as good as they could have been had he been with a consistent quarterback. But that said, I don't think he wants to leave. And I don't think they're interested in letting Terry leave. Right now, if you're talking about culture, Terry McLaurin is the single most important culture guy in that locker room for Ron Rivera. So they wouldn't let him leave. If they had to do what they had to do with Brandon Sheriff, they'd do it with Terry in a heartbeat, which is franchise him twice just to try to find a way to work out a deal. Terry's not going anywhere. So he doesn't really control leaving per se as much as he controls signing on the dotted line. But his immediate future, the football team holds that in their hand, because they could just say, well, we'll franchise you for the next 2 years. But I think he's going to get a new deal this offseason. He'll be one of the first guys up in line to get a brand new deal this offseason. I expect that to get done relatively quickly because of how much he means. Similar to Jonathan Allen, how much he means to this football team can't be understated, not only on the field, but off of it. I can't see Terry going anywhere else. HHC Lunar writes, thoughts on Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral. I told you, to me, he's the best quarterback in the draft class right now. But again, I haven't watched all of these quarterbacks intently enough to say who is or isn't good. I can just give you passing knowledge of guys I've watched during games and say, oh, he stinks. Like, I'm not a Desmond Ridder fan. Not a big fan of his game. I'm not a huge fan of Sam Howell at North Carolina. These are guys that were highly touted. Spencer Rattler stinks. Okay. These are guys that were high. And we see this happen every year, where these quarterbacks are preseason favorites to do this and do that, be, Heisman watch lists, all of this good jazz. When we start projecting and, you get those way too early projections from all of these draft beatniks, they'll tell you this quarterback is going to be top 5 pick. This guy's going to be a top 10 pick, this, that, and the third. And then you get in the season and these guys stink. And then there's a guy that comes out of nowhere. Malik Willis might be that quarterback this year. Or Matt Corral could be that guy that, no one's really talking about, kind of off of the beaten path, so to speak, a little bit further out of the public eye, that comes into the picture. We've seen this happen the last 3 or 4 years strong, whether it's Baker Mayfield coming out of nowhere to become the number 1 overall pick. We saw Kyler Murray kind of do the same thing, even though, we saw the talent at Oklahoma, but he hadn't played a ton, and he shot up to number 1. Josh Allen is another guy, shot up, draft boards. Obviously, Zach Wilson last year shot up draft boards. Joe Burrow is the best example of a quarterback coming out of nowhere. Before that season started, that magical 2019 season started, he was a 3rd-round pick. He has one of the greatest college football seasons I've ever seen, and he ends up being the number 1 overall pick. So I don't know if there's a quarterback that can do that this year. Obviously, college football isn't set up that way this year with no dominant football teams. Malik Willis might be that quarterback. But for me right now, with the guys that I've watched, Matt Corral, to me, is the best quarterback in college football. But that has a chance to come into the NFL. Let me say that. But that could change with film study. But I like him. I don't know how big he is. I don't think he's a really big dude. That's one of the knocks. But he's got a rifle for an arm. He's got great mobility. I think he can throw off of multiple platforms. But I don't necessarily. But this shouldn't be a knock because of the college game and what it is and how the NFL has evolved to guys coming out of spread offenses. I don't love the offense that he plays in. It's so RPO heavy that it makes his read so easy. Does he actually have the ability to read a football field? I don't know that without watching film, but so much of what they do revolves around sticking in the belly of the running back, force the linebackers to make a decision, and whatever decision they make, you make your decision off of what they do, and it makes the reads so much easier when you're playing in a heavy RPO offensive scheme, which he does at Ole Miss. So I don't really know about Matt Corral enough to say that, yes, this is the guy, like how I felt definitively about some of the quarterbacks in the last few years coming in. But I will tell you that I do like Matt Corral more so than a lot of these other quarterbacks. But again, we will see. Got a super chat here from Kyle. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Kyle, who writes, "Hey, Lou, long time, first time. Glad to hear from you. I feel like we've talked before, Kyle. I know I've seen that thumbnail before, but I could be wrong. Love your perspective and humor. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Kyle." He says, "Question. In hindsight, do you wish Washington football team took Herbert over Young?" Of course. Hindsight is 2020, though. We all know that. I've already said this multiple times. At the time when we were making that decision, it was a no-brainer. Literally, we had the Chase Young Bowl against the Giants in week 16 of that season, where literally both of these teams were on a crash course for Chase Young, and we had to lose that game in order to put ourselves in a position to get Chase Young. If we would have beat the Giants, and that game went to overtime and ended up being 41-35. Daniel Jones carved us up, and I was so glad that he did, because we tried our hardest to win that game and blow it. But it's funny because everyone has amnesia as to how people felt about Justin Herbert. Nobody loved Justin Herbert going into that draft. He was intriguing, and I said this during that draft class, he was toolsy, but nobody loved Justin Herbert. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, and I'll admit it, a lot of people said, oh, he suffers from that Oregon quarterback syndrome of not being vocal enough, kind of passive-aggressive demeanor, doesn't have what it takes to be a real leader, has all the tools. He's big, he's athletic, got a cannon for an arm, everything you're looking for. But he's too close to Marcus Mariota, and we know what he's been in this league. He's not vocal enough. He's not fiery enough. He's not a leader of men. And, oh, by the way, his game, it's okay. It hasn't been great, even though he's got all these skills. So anybody that sits here and tells you they were all over Justin Herbert is probably lying. They're probably being disingenuous. There may be a few people that were all over him and thought he was going to be the next coming of, Josh Allen, because that's what he looks like. But those guys were few and far between, and I wasn't one of them. I said he's toolsy. If he puts it all together, he could be dangerous, but I wanted no parts of him in that draft. And that's why he went as the third quarterback. If the Dolphins thought, we weren't the only ones, and I wasn't the only one. If the Dolphins thought that this kid had what it took, you think they would have took Tua? Hell no, they would have took Justin Herbert. Nobody was on Herbert. The Chargers took him literally because he was what was left. Maybe they loved him, maybe they didn't. But if they really loved him, they would have traded up to make sure they got him. They just waited to see what quarterback fell in their lap. If Tua was there, they would have took Tua. Like, nobody really loved Herbert. So it's funny to hear everyone talk about Herbert now and what he's doing. But even the Chargers GM came out and said, look, there were some real concerns about Justin Herbert when he came out. Real concerns by a lot of people in the know in the NFL. It just so happens that he made a lot of people look foolish with the way he's playing. And it happens. It happens all the time. But I'm not afraid to say I wasn't in on Justin Herbert. The pick was clearly Chase Young. The only guy I was willing to take over Chase Young in that draft was Joe Burrow. And of course, we weren't going to be able to get our hands on him because he was going number 1 overall to Cincinnati. Had the Bengals had a change of heart and said, we want Chase Young. He's an Ohio State kid right in our backyard. We love him. We think he could change the game for us. And they took him. It's a no-brainer. You take Joe Burrow and you keep it pushing. But he wasn't going to be available to us. He was the only quarterback that I was willing to take over Chase Young. Of course, now in hindsight, Chase Young is a giant or whoever the hell, a lion, whoever the hell wants to draft him, he's yours. We're taking the quarterback. Montez Sweat will be our edge rushing beast, and we would have tried to add another guy down the road, but that's not where we are. And you know what I'd venture to say? Had we gotten our hands on Justin Herbert, he probably wouldn't be as good as he is. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. He's probably doing what he's doing because of the environment that he's in. Our environment now is ready to embrace a quarterback. I don't know if our environment when Ron first got here was ready to embrace a quarterback. I don't know. Maybe it would have been. But I think now we're ready to go get a young quarterback because the environment is more stable now. But when Ron first got here, it was a mess. We were going through so many different things, name change, off the field issues, no receivers. He would have had to been throwing to Dontrell Inman and Isaiah Wright and all of these bums last year. It would not have been the same as him going and throwing to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry and Austin Eckler and all the guys he was able to get the football to. I don't know if he would have been as successful early on in his career. And part of his success now is the fact that he was successful in year 1. So, of course, I would have taken him now in hindsight. Obviously, anybody who says they wouldn't is a damn fool. But that said, that wasn't the case last year when he was, available in the draft. That just wasn't the thought process. So, thank you for the super chat, Kyle. See where we are. I think the last comment was that about Matt Corral. So here we are right here. HHC Lunar, who writes, what do my Cardinals need to officially make this team the favorites in the NFC? I really think I've actually been pleasantly surprised, and I had to offer up a 00 on them adding James Conner. I was so wrong about what he would be for them. He's their hammer right around the end zone when they're looking to run out the clock, have that 4-minute offense. James Conner is the man for the job. He's been spectacular for you this year. And I remember chastising the Cardinals. Like, what the hell are you doing? He doesn't even fit your offense. I was so wrong about him. And it's good to see. He actually looks good this year. Last year, he looked slow. He looked out of shape. He didn't look explosive. He looks explosive, dynamic, physical, all the good things you look for in a power back. James Conner has been that for you. I actually like the moves you've made. The Moore kid, Rondale Moore, has been phenomenal for you. He fits that offense like hand in glove, and I knew he would. I thought that was the perfect place for him to go. Cliff Kingsbury was going to be really able to take his strengths and really accentuate them and mitigate his weaknesses, and he's done that. But I really think you need another corner is what I think you need. I think if you can get another cornerback in there, because that's still one of the positions I worry about with that team, even though I love your secondary, specifically your safety position. But if you can get another corner in Arizona, and that's always been your issue, really, even when you had Patrick Peterson, who was the opposite of him. I think you need more cornerback help. And I've heard rumors that the Cardinals aren't really interested in making any moves at the trade deadline, but we'll see what they decide to do. Cornerback is the one position that I think you could upgrade. And I've given you some names. Like if I add a Kyle Fuller to your football team, that defense becomes that much more lethal, honestly speaking. So that would be it for me. You look strong in just about every department on your defense, but that cornerback position is one that I think could use an upgrade if I were the Arizona Cardinals. We'll see what happens. Anyhow, got a super chat, and this one is from JH from Greensboro, North Carolina. Thank you for the super chat, JH from Greensboro, North Carolina, who writes, Lou, am I late? Did you already talk about the Raiders? Are they trying to get us investigated? I mean, so what do you mean get us investigated? That whole investigation was surrounding us to begin with. Nothing's going to come of this. And no, the Raiders aren't trying to have us investigated. The Players Association is looking to have the rest of the emails made public, which the NFL isn't going to do because it doesn't benefit them any. Because there's probably more bullshit in there that they don't want out. And it's not just John Gruden. There are other guys that would be on the hook if all of those emails were to be disclosed. So it doesn't benefit them any, including potentially Daniel Snyder. But that's another conversation for another day. We've already had that conversation anyway. So at the end of the day, no, there's nothing that can be done. This investigation started with us. John Gruden got dragged into this thing because of us. So there's no turning around and trying to push it back on us. I mean, this investigation was done and they didn't find anything. We wanted them to find something. We wanted them to make Daniel Snyder the pariah here and push his ass out. And they didn't do it. So no, that's not going to happen. I think I got another super chat. Yes, I do. And it's from Vincent Coe. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Vincent Coe, writes, is Pete Carroll going to be fired? If so, give me Brady. No, he's not going to be fired. I don't think so. Him and John Schneider really run that organization right now. And I don't see that changing. And if this season goes awry, I think a lot of it can be blamed on the fact that Russell Wilson got injured. Now, if you're watching closely, you go, hey, look, you guys were struggling before he got hurt. And I just thought this was a tumultuous offseason. I really did, And a lot of people forget Pete Carroll is the oldest head coach in the league. You can't tell by the way he looks. You can't tell by the way he carries himself. Really energetic, one of the more spunky coaches in the league. But Pete Carroll's the oldest coach in the league. A lot of people don't realize that. Do the Seahawks want to move on? Maybe they do. I don't see them doing that, though. I think Pete Carroll's one of those dudes that he'll coach until he's decided that he's ready to retire, or he's struggling to the point where they're like, we got to move on. Games passed Pete by. We got to move on. And I just don't see that happening. So, but Joe Brady is going to get a job here shortly. Trust me. But we'll see what happens. I don't think Pete Carroll gets fired, though. But we'll see. Vincent Coe, once again, double up. Thank you for doubling up. Vincent Coe, who writes, is Matt Corral QB1 this draft? I mean, for me right now, yes. But again, that's subject to change. I mean, as we sit here literally second week of October, it's hard to say who's going to be QB1 in the draft. There's so much time between now and April when the draft takes place that, so many different things can happen. College football season isn't even over yet. So hard to say, but he's, to me, looks the most NFL ready in terms of transitioning from the college game to the NFL game with his skill sets. That said, a lot of other guys that'll be available. I don't think this is a particularly strong quarterback draft class. I just don't. So I think there are going to be some teams that have the wool pulled over their eyes and are going to make some mistakes because of desperation, needing a quarterback and reaching for somebody that really isn't the answer. I think one or two teams, maybe even three, may be looking for a quarterback in 2-3 years again from now because they made a mistake in this year's draft. So we'll see. JH from Greensboro, North Carolina. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, appreciate the info. And dog, I like our chances. Our chances this week or in general or in the draft. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm assuming you're talking about this week. You better than me because I don't like our chances at all. I like our chances more than I did before the season started when I thought the Chiefs would be like 5-0, 4-1 right now instead of 2-3, just like us. And their defense stinks, but I that doesn't make me feel any more confident that our defense is going to be able to stop them from scoring 42 points. So, yeah, I don't like our chances at all, but we'll see what happens, you know? That's all you can do is kind of just wait and see. I'll be watching on Sunday, that's for sure, you know? The Hawk TV writes, please give us your initial offseason moves that could help us get back to the 2020 season. Again, that's a really frivolous conversation to have right now. And it's not fruitful because it's impossible to know. I'm going to talk about something later on tonight on Washington Football Nightly. So I don't want to expound upon it now. We'll talk about it later. It's one of the topics I really want to dive into tonight. But I'll just say this. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have those conversations right now because we don't know. We really don't know what this roster is going to shape into. We don't know who's going to become key contributors and who's not. We don't know a lot of things about this football team. We think we know, but it's early. So I'll just say that. Vincent Coe, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Brandon Cooks to the Chiefs. Let me call it right here. Remember, the first name I brought up in trade talks about 3 weeks ago when the season first started was Brandon Cooks. I said, man, he's having a phenomenal start to the season. And if I'm the Texans, and I talked about Lonnie Johnson today, I'm offloading anything worth having, you know, because I know Brandon Cooks isn't going to be there for the long haul. He's not a part of our rebuild. So move him. If you can get something for him, move him. Same with Lonnie Johnson. Even though Lonnie Johnson's a young player and he may be able to grow with you, if you can get something for Lonnie Johnson and you think it's more than what the value of him playing for your team is, you move Lonnie Johnson and you continue to acquire as much draft capital as possible because that's what's ultimately going to help you get back to being good. The more draft picks you have, even if you don't actually use them, but package them up to go and get the quarterback to replace Deshaun Watson. Either way, whatever the case may be, you need to acquire as many draft picks as possible if you're the Texans. And so I think Brandon Cooks is a guy that could be on the move. And I don't think the Chiefs want to go out and get Cooks. That's why they signed Josh Gordon. They're hoping he can be that third option behind Kelsey and Hill. That's why they went out and signed Josh Gordon. If he doesn't work, then they may have to go back to the drawing board. And that's when maybe a trade comes into play. But remember, the Chiefs, they've been aggressive and been trading for guys already. So I don't know if they're in really interested in giving up any draft capital. They've done enough of that recently, you know, going after Orlando Brown and things of that nature. I don't know if they're really interested in giving up more draft capital to get a guy and paying him the kind of money that Cooks. I don't know what his deal looks like. I don't know how much years he has left or how much money he has left on that deal. But I think they want Josh Gordon to be their new Samuel Watkins, and I don't know if that's the move they'll make. But Cooks can help somebody, you know. Somebody could use a Brandon Cooks. I still contend, and I know they're probably not going to do it, I still contend a team like Green Bay could use a Brandon Cooks. I know they got Randall Cobb, and they still don't have a number 2 receiver in Green Bay. So, anyway, I digress. Let's get back to a few more comments. We'll take a few more comments and we'll get out of here and transition to our final segment. HHC Lunar says, do you think Kentucky are frauds this year? Can they beat Georgia? I don't think Kentucky is a fraud. I just don't think they're good enough to beat Georgia. But then again, I don't think anybody in the SEC East is good enough to beat Georgia. The only team that I think is capable of beating Georgia plays in the SEC West. And you know who I'm talking about, of course, Alabama. So, no, I don't think Kentucky is a fraud. I just don't think they're good enough, you know. I think Kentucky just beat the brakes off of LSU this past weekend. They already beat Florida the weekend prior to that. Like, Kentucky's legit. I just don't think they're good enough to beat Georgia. Got another super chat. This is from Donnell Shipley. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Donnell Shipley, writes, I told you during the Giants game that Washington sucks. Eagles will come in second in this division. You did say that. I remember you saying that. And I kind of fanned you off like, all right, get out of here with that nonsense. And it may come to fruition. The Eagles defensively are really good. I still don't believe in their offense. I don't believe in their coaching right now. But they've been in ball games this year, you know, and they're sitting right there at 2-3. I think they're going to give Tampa Bay everything they could ask for in this game on Thursday. They're going to be right in that ball game with a chance to win. They're just not going to win. And but after that, their schedule lightens up considerably. And I could see them winning, 4 out of their next 6 or 4 out of their next 5. I could see the Eagles getting hot and, leaving Washington in the dust here. So you may ultimately be right, Donnell. You may. Now, I don't buy is that Washington sucks. I don't think we suck. I think our defense sucks. I don't think the team sucks. And that's the difference. You got to be specific because there are teams that suck offensively and defensively. They stink. And their record reflects that. And then I just think our one unit stinks. Like last year, we didn't suck. Our offense sucked last year. Our defense was good. I think it's the same thing this year. It's just reversed. Our offense is actually good. Our defense stinks. But our team doesn't stink. The bad part about when your defense stinks is that you can get blown out. And you may not have chances in games to win. When your offense stinks, but your defense is good, you may not score enough points to win, but your defense is going to give you a chance and you're not going to get blown out that often. That's the difference. That's why you much rather be strong defensively than offensively. Because if you're not in a position to score 40 like the Chiefs, they stink on defense. But guess what? They got Mahomes, they got Hill, they got Kelsey. They got a chance every single week, even if the defense stinks, because they're capable of scoring 40 in any given week. But that's no way to live. Because what happens when you have an off day, like they did against Buffalo? What happens? You're going to get blown out. But when you have a great or a good defense and your offense stinks, yeah, the offense may not show up and you're accustomed to the offense not showing up. But if the defense does what they usually do, which is what happened last year, you're going to have a chance. You may not win because you may not score enough points, but you're going to have a chance. And that's why I'd much rather be stronger defensively. And that's why this season hurts so much, because the offense is actually good and the defense stinks. And that doesn't give you a chance every single week. Because all it takes is for Taylor Heineke to throw 2 picks, and now we scored, 20 points in the opposition because the defense can't stop any damn body. They're giving up 34 and we lose and get blown out in the process, like we did against Buffalo, like we did against New Orleans. So that's why it's a bitter pill to swallow, but we don't suck. A lot of y'all throw around terms like suck like too freely. Y'all like to throw around the B word, like guys are busts too freely. Be more specific. Our defense stinks. Our defense sucks. And that could change. But right now it sucks. But you ultimately may be right, Donnell, that the Eagles may come in second place. And we may ultimately suck. You might be right about that too. We may ultimately, all around as an entire team, suck. But right now, I think it's more so the defensive side of the football than anything else. All right, let's transition to our next segment. And that is garbage time. So I want to go ahead and have a Thursday night look ahead to the Bucs at Eagles, give you my prediction for the game and see if I can't get on the board. I'm 5-0 to this point this season on Thursday night games, which is a far cry from last year. I was all over the place last year. I think at this point I might have been 2-3, 3-2, something like that. The Thursday night games have been pretty easy to dissect, though. They haven't really made us think long and hard about these Thursday night games. there's usually been a dominant side that everybody's picked, and there have been close games. Don't get me wrong. First game of the season, Cowboys Bucs. Who thought that the Cowboys were going to be that competitive? They almost won that football game. Probably should have won that football game. I mean, we've had some games like that on Thursday night. Washington Giants. I mean, that's another prime example. The first 2 Thursday night games were just dandies. Could have went either way, But at the end of the day, here we are, week 6, with another game that I think we more likely than not agree on what the outcome is going to be. If you're an Eagles fan, you may disagree. That's fine. Knock yourself out. But I just look at this game, and while the Bucs are banged up, they're going to be without their safety once again, Winfield Jr. They're going to be without Rob Gronkowski again. Tom Brady is dealing with a sore thumb right now that he injured in the game, and he said it's not going to stop him from playing. He says it's not, injured as much as it is it's just discomfort that he's dealing with, but he can do everything he needs to do. We'll see. That may affect him in this game. Who knows? But when it's all said and done, the Buccaneers are way more talented than the Eagles. The Buccaneers are way more explosive on offense than that of the Eagles. And even though the Buccaneers defensively haven't been all that great this season, I think their defense is still athletic enough, and they're going to be without Levante David, are the Buccaneers. So they've got some key pieces missing. That said, they're still plenty fast on defense to harass, because I think if you really want to harass Jalen Hurts, you need to be fast defensively. When you don't have enough team speed defensively and they can run read option and RPOs and he can keep it and run, that's when they start to hurt you, because now you're so concerned with his legs, it opens up their passing game. If he tries to run, these Buccaneers defenders are so damn fast that he could be in a world of trouble. So I think they're going to be able to keep him in the pocket. I think they're going to force him into a mistake or two in this game. And I just think the Buccaneers offensively are going to start slow in this game. I think the Eagles are better defensively than people realize. Josh Sweat just got a contract extension, and he's playing his ass off this year. Every game I watch, he's getting at least a sack and a couple of pressures. Javon Hargraves damn near took over the Panthers game last week. He was unblockable last week. And we're not even talking about Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham or none of these other guys. We're talking about the other unsung heroes, the other guys. This defensive front has been really good. And I remember laughing at, Lord Brunson for talking about the Eagles having the best defensive line in the NFC East. And we all laughed at it. And I'm still laughing now, but I'm laughing not to cry, because right now he's being proven right. Their defensive line is wreaking havoc on the opposition. Meanwhile, we can't bust a grape most weeks with all these first-round picks on the defensive line. So they've been playing really well up front, and their secondary, the corners particularly, are playing well, but they haven't, like the Panthers and Sam Darnold are one thing. They get 3 picks last week. This is going to look more like the Dallas game than it is the Carolina Panthers game, where that secondary is about to get tattooed and bruised and abused by Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Chris Godwin and company. And, of course, Brady pulling the strings back there. And Leonard Fournette is running the hell out of the football right now. The Eagles just gave up 100 yards to Chuba Hubbard, of all people. So Fournette's running the hell out of the football. He looks like he's turned the clock back to Fournette of 2017 when he was in his prime and leading Jacksonville to the AFC Championship game. So they've got too many weapons on offense. I said all that to say this. The Eagles are going to be in this game early. And I wouldn't be shocked if we go into the fourth quarter with this score something like 17-13 or 20-16 or 20-10, but they're hanging in there. And then the Buccaneers explode in the fourth quarter, and this thing looks like an ass whooping. And they scored, 21 in the fourth quarter and end up winning this game 38-20, But this thing is going to be a lot closer than you think. I remember that Giants game with the Bucs last year where the Giants should have won, and they remember the controversial 2-point conversion. They didn't throw the flag, or they threw the flag and then they picked it up, and the Bucs ended up hanging on by the 2-point conversion. I could see them being in a dogfight like that in this game. But ultimately, I think Jalen Hurts is going to make some mistakes. That Bucs defense is going to force him into a turnover or two, maybe even a fumble. And I think the Bucs offense is going to capitalize, and they're going to run away and hide with this thing in the fourth quarter. But I wouldn't be shocked if this game is super close. But I'm taking the Buccaneers in this game. And I think, again, they're going to run away. Mark my words, going into the fourth quarter, this is going to be a one-score game. I truly believe that. But I think in the fourth quarter, that's when the Buccaneers are going to pull away, run and hide. I'm going to take this game into the fourth quarter at 17-13. And then the Eagles are going to fall the hell apart, and the Bucs are going to take advantage. And we've seen the Bucs do that multiple times this year. They did it against Atlanta, where they explode for like 21 points in the fourth quarter and a couple of pick sixes. And all of a sudden, a 28-25 game turns into 48-25. They did it again this past week against the Dolphins. They scored 25 points in the fourth quarter and explode on the Miami Dolphins, who were hanging around in that ball game, and make that thing look like an ass whooping, which it turned out to be. I could see the same thing happening in this game. Give me the Bucs 38-20 over the Philadelphia Eagles in this football game, but it'll be, 17-13 going into the fourth quarter. Bucs explode in the fourth quarter, run and hide, and win this thing going away. So that's my Thursday night look ahead, and that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 212th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. Remember, if you're out there and you haven't already done so, please do the kid a huge favor and hit the subscribe button for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss the thing, and also hit the like button. Over 180 of you out there, only 80 likes. That's nonsense, guys. Nonsense. Truly nonsense. I love the fact that we got to 75 without me having to beg. Let's get to 100 on the way out the door, though. We can do it. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Truly appreciate you. Please and thank you in advance. So, got a super chat that will take us out of here. And it's from Donnell Shipley. Double up. Thank you for the super chat, Donnell Shipley, and doubling up. Really do appreciate you, who writes, much respect, Louie, because I come in here and give you a hard time, but you take it on the chin. Love the content, brother. Look, I tell you guys this all the time. I love to toot my own horn. And so when I'm right, I'm going to tell y'all I'm right. But when I'm wrong, I will admit I'm wrong. I'll be the first to tell you I was wrong. And when y'all say something and I remember it, because sometimes people will come at me and like, remember I told you this? Nah, I don't remember you saying that. And it's easy to say that after the fact. But I remember you very vividly the night that we won that game, coming and saying, hey, we stink and the Eagles are going to be second in this division. I remember dismissing you like, man, get out of here with that. Eagles stink. We're going to be just fine. But you might end up being right. And I've watched this Eagles team, and that defense is really good. And that schedule is starting to lighten up a bit. And with the Raiders struggling now, all of a sudden, that schedule doesn't look as tough for the Eagles to navigate. If they can figure out a way to get out of their own way from a penalty standpoint, negating touchdowns and things of that nature, and take care of the football, with that defense, they got a shot, to be in second place. So I don't think you're wrong necessarily, although I don't think we stink, as you said, we suck, or that was your term. I don't think we suck. I think our defense sucks. I don't think our team sucks, but we'll see. I hope you're wrong, but right now it doesn't look like you're wrong. It does not look like you're wrong. So in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you guys for hitting that like button. Really do appreciate you. We've up over 100. That's perfect. That's the perfect way to end this thing. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care, and I will see most of you for Washington Football Nightly later on tonight.